Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jean-François Piot, and I will be your host. Please note that we cannot hear you as you are on mute. So if you have any question, please use the chat window during the presentation, and we will address all your questions during an open Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So today we have the pleasure to present you this webinar with my colleague Garth. So Garth, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name is Garth Fisher. I am a customer success engineer here at GSX based outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Garth. And I work at GSX for now 12 years, and I'm responsible for all the relationship we have with Microsoft and strategic alliances. So let's dive into our main topic today. So at GSX, we have been working with more than 400 customers, deploying Office 365, running it in production, trying to optimize the route to the cloud, and trying to ensure end-user performance. We have worked many times with Microsoft Fast Track as well, helping enterprise IT to ensure the success of their project. And after all this work, we have come to two main conclusions. The first one is that you need to realize that Office 365 deployment is a never-ending project. And I'm not saying that it will take ages for you to deploy and then adopt a specific workload. What I'm saying here is that there's new workloads, new features, new way of using Office 365 all the time. And these constant changes always drive new challenges for you, for your ability to provide and ensure decent quality of services that is necessary for your end user satisfaction and your workload adoption. The second feedback we have is that operational issues and financial loss happen at every stage of this project. We have seen many large deployments costing millions of dollars that are suddenly stopped because of one specific and critical site experiencing bad service quality. If you have business line management on this side, the news quickly spreads out to the top management, putting the IT on fire. So stopping a deployment project for many months to try to figure out what is going on is a major source of financial loss. But operational issues don't stop after deployment. The adoption phase is critical because people do not really start to use a workload at 100% of its capability the day it is available to them. You know that there's always these adoption phases of people gradually increase the usage of their workload. So the problem is that without any way to measure the service quality delivered to your site, you have no ability to know if you have issues or not. So you are just flying blind, waiting for problem to happen, believing that the end user will do the job of a monitoring tool. And that really is never happening. The reason is that users rarely complain to the IT department. Users complain to their management, and their management complain to the IT. And during all this time, productivity loss is huge. And finally, when IT decide to do something about it, to analyze their route to the cloud, to deploy SD-WAN, to change their DNS or access point, they have no way to measure the benefit for their end user. Without facts, it's very difficult to explain why you want to spend additional thousands of dollars to maybe improve the end user experience. And that leads to oversize or undersize your project. So let's see now in details 3 customer stories that will illustrate this feedback, and then let's see what kind of lesson we can learn from it in order to prevent these operational and financial loss during Office 365 project. So the first use case is about the deployment of Teams for a large retailer that had 90 locations and about 50,000 users. The beauty of Teams, and you know it, is that it enables you to work, to talk, to meet in real time. But it's also its main challenge. Users are experiencing the service quality in real time. The project had just started when several sites reported issues performing calls. So the voice quality was bad, it was impossible to hear people on the phone, or there was some latency during the call. And then the project was stopped for 6 months, costing millions of extra dollars to figure out what's going on. So they called us. And Garth, can you tell a bit more about it?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. So as Jeff mentioned, they're rolling out teams. I believe they got to about 5 sites and realized that 3 sites were complaining about performance. So they stopped the project because, how can you continue when 3 out of 5 are having issues? So when they came to us for help, seeing that they were in a bind and a pinch needed to move really quickly, we suggested that they use our cloud environment. That way they can hit the ground running quicker and only need to provide one robot at least from one of the locations experiencing the issues. They decided to deploy that one robot at their Paris location so we can try to get to the heart of the matter. So one thing to keep in mind is that here at GSX, we monitor the end user experience so we can keep end users on the optimal path to productivity. What I'm about to show you here now is one of our historical or one of our reports to show you, what's been going on over longer periods of time. We're going to look at, the performance of that Paris location. You can see we're leveraging Power BI. It's a great tool and fits well with our tool sets. And here we're looking at Paris for a period of 30 days. So what you're going to see here is, essentially what was happening before and after we were able to show them what was going on. So we deployed the robot here in Paris, and you can see that, for example, if we look at packet loss, you can see that packet loss this is the threshold it should be under by Microsoft recommendations, but it was always above that line, always continuously until here. And I'll explain that in a minute. Same thing goes for the MOS score, where you can see it was always fledgling around the threshold and most of the times beneath that threshold until we deployed the robot and were able to provide some recommendations. You can see it went up and increased substantially and stayed that way. So, once again, we're able to see that there was some packet loss coming out of this location. There was also jitter, as you can see here. And this is when we implemented our fix. Same thing for the yield ratio and degradation average and stuff like that. It's really simple to see when it all got really, really better. So based on the fact that we were seeing packet loss and jitter and actually the round trip times as well from the Paris location that was having a negative impact on the team's performance, is clearly a network issue. So once that team in Paris were able to perform tests based on what we showed them about the packet loss, jitter, and round trip times, they were able to see that it was a failing switch at their egress point that was causing all these problems. And once again, you can see the change in performance once they went ahead and did that. So we're looking at 30 days out here, they were getting at about 61% performance. If we take a look at go 10 days, which is after they implemented the fix, you can clearly see that the performance substantially increased. MOS is always above the threshold of 4. Jitter is way below. Everything is just in line now. And of course, you're going to have really, really good performance out of this location now. So after reviewing the data, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe Gas, we can just explain what is the MOS here, because
sure.
maybe not everybody knows what the MOS is. What MOS means.
Yeah, very good point, Jeff. So anyway, after reviewing the data and seeing like the MOS here, which is a mean opinion score, and we've all seen this in one way or another, one form or another, especially if you've used Skype for Business over the last few years, or even Teams. After one of those calls, a little survey will pop up with asking you to rate the call with 5 stars, 5 being the maximum. That's a manual way of gathering the MOS. So you're rating the call, and that's why it's only up to 5, because the MOS can't be greater than 5. When you factor in the audio codec that goes in with the voice calls, MOS can't really be more than 4.5, 4.5, or 4.4, which is why you see it peaking there. MOS is affected by things like, packet loss and jitter and round trip time, some of the metrics you see us looking at here. So that's why you could see a direct correlation. When these things were bad, you had poor service quality and your MOS was low. And when they fixed the issues, you can see all these things got better, and then it had a direct impact on the MOS itself. After seeing how much the service was improved from just one robot being deployed, they were like, all right, let's go. Let's deploy the rest of these other sites that are having team issues. So this use case, you can see how GSX can help with all stages of the deployment, including continued monitoring, so you can see how the service performs as more end users start to consume it.
Yeah, thank you, Gas. So maybe you can wrap up this case. So thanks, as you say, thanks to GSX, this customer was able to proactively assess the service quality on each site And then they were able to continuously assess in real time if onboarding new user was impacting the end user experience. And with that, they were able to prevent unexpected issues and avoid further delay. And so that's why it's so critical to monitor the end user experience while you are onboarding new users side by side. So let's go now on the second use case. Second use case happened to a large bank we are working with for many, many years now, and that have offices in USA, in EMEA, and in APAC. Exchange Online had been deployed for a few months, and from an IT perspective, everything seemed fine. So there was not many tickets from sometime from there to there, but that's all. But suddenly what happened is that as an executive committee, the top management expressed its concern about the ability of the IT to manage and deliver good service quality for Office 365. And it was a shock because nobody really at the IT was really aware that something like that was coming. Number of business lines had complaints without the IT to be able to be aware of anything. So, Garth, can we go a bit deeper in that typical situation?
Right. So, I mean, that's an issue that faces a lot of organizations today is just IT not knowing of what's going on. So, an end user has a problem. They don't really open a ticket. They try to fix it themselves. When they can't fix it themselves, then they might call over Jim or Tom or Jane who's sitting next to them. And now you have 3, 4, 5, 6 people looking at this one issue, and now you have 3, 4, 5, 6 people not being productive at all. So that clearly causes a lost productivity. And actually, the problem is not really being fixed because they're not even in a position to fix the issue. They're just looking around and trying to figure out what's happening. So that's where GSX also comes in, is that we provide proactive monitoring, not just with our real-time dashboards, but also with our real-time web UI, as well as some alerts and other ways that we can let you know what's going on. So here I'm just going to show you a quick example of some of the things that we provide in that space. And again, this is the Power BI, and if you notice, it's slightly different. This one's actually published and is online that I'm accessing it via web browser. So that's another great feature of Power BI. So here again, you can see we're looking at Exchange Online. You can see that, and again, this is historical, sort of the reporting piece. And you can see certain things like auto discover taking longer than it should to really figure out where to route the traffic to. Open mailbox was a little high, and even a little bit of create email, but nothing too crazy. So this is some of the things that GSX provides to help you stay ahead of the end users and not rely on the end users to really let you know what's going on. So coupled with that, then we also have our real-time web UI, which shows you in real time what's going on at particular locations. And here's that Boston location. You see the performance is worse now. And actually, I need to refresh this. I had it open for a while. Let me go back in, let it load properly, and show you what I wanted to show you. This is an example of our real-time web UI. Here you see it'll call out which robot is, how it's performing. It'll show you the percent warnings it's displaying. It'll also go down, in a date format on the worst actions that took the longest times. Here you can see my modern authentication is taking, 25 seconds, 21 seconds there, 25 there, and even more there. Then we'll break it down into the worst percent of the time of what's happening with these actions. And you can see right here, modern authentication is what's the main impact on the service, as well as auto discover. And then furthermore, the real-time web UI will go down here and again show you this in the graphical format. And you can see all the different actions we're performing against Exchange Online, so we can report on whichever one may not be performing properly. Now, if you wanted to say, change this up to look at a specific time, you just sort of slide that slider there. Everything reflects to show you that the new time frame, and all the graphs and everything adjusts. You can also modify this if you wanted to by adding in new things, etc. I'm not going to do that right now. All things that you can do. You can even drag stuff around to wherever you want it to be. It'll say, hey, do you want to keep that? You can say yes or no and do what you want to do there. So coupled with our, historical reporting here, and then the real-time reporting you get here, and IT can see in real time what's going on and put out advisories, so people don't waste time and productivity by trying to fix something they can't really fix. So coupled with all these things, then we also have our alerts. So here's an example of an alert that you would have gotten for exchange performance. See, I was talking about there was an action that exceeded the threshold. It's giving you that it's a performance issue, and it's telling you that the upload time on that Boston robot was between certain times, Cambridge and Washington, as well as a lot of other information here, the ID, the priority, the status, if it's opened or closed. And this has the ability as well to integrate with lots of ITSMs out there like ServiceNow, so that this alert can follow along whatever workflow you put in place for that. And we achieve that with webhooks and stuff like that as well. These are some of the ways that GSX can help users productive by them not by your IT not relying on them to let you know when something is going wrong. You'll know yourself and be able to put out an advisory and stop all this lost productivity.
Yeah, thank you, Garth. So we've seen here that thanks to GSX and the IT, as you say, has now a global and total control over the service quality of Office 65 that is delivered to their site and to their business line. The second point is that they realize, and you said that too, they realize that 95% of the performance issues they could find, they were actually be able to solve them. It was not Microsoft issues. It was everything in between the user and the Microsoft data center. So by being able to identify it, they were able to test different layers, the route to the cloud, in order to improve the situation. And that is exactly the topic of our third customer story. So let's go in this third one. And this one comes from our work with a big name of the German chemical industry. So like many of you, this company was struggling with their proxy, their DNS configuration, and some sites were complaining about OneDrive performance. The IT was believing that maybe it was the proxy, maybe not, maybe it was the DNS, maybe not. And maybe all of that was affecting the end user experience, but the problem is that they had no data. They had no facts to work. And so that's how, again, they call us. And so Garth, can you show us a little bit how they did with this situation?
Yes, I would love to. So let's go here, and this time we're going to take a look at SharePoint Online or OneDrive and see what we have going on here. Right, so we're looking at OneDrive deployed from the Boston location, and we're looking at about 30 days worth of data here. So one thing to understand as well is that the route to Office 365 is super important. It can dictate whether or not end users will have a great or a poor experience. Other things to keep in mind as well is that Microsoft recommends that traffic destined for Office 365 either goes direct or bypasses any proxies. So in this case, we're going to see how a proxy can have a negative impact on Office 365 performance. So essentially what you're looking at here is the Boston location traffic was actually going through the proxy for a long period of time, and they were having very poor performance. You can see that it was around 44% of the performance that was delivered to the end users based on how long it took to log in to OneDrive, upload a file, and download a file from OneDrive. So let's take a deeper look at the login here and sort of see what's happening. So you can see here, this is when the traffic was going through the proxy. Again, always login times are constantly above the threshold, which accounted for those poor performance numbers. Once we identified that and said, hey, let's see what we get let's bypass the proxy, just as a test to see if this is truly what's causing your problems. Sure enough, proxy was bypassed around here, around the 10th, and you can see the sharp drop in the login time. It went back down beneath the threshold and stayed beneath the threshold. So again, even though you can see that there, they have other locations. So for example, they had a location in Nice, France that was never using a proxy. So to illustrate even further the point, had a robot there too, just so we can see how they line up. And we're going to take a look at the same login again. As you can see, Nice, the blue color, not using any proxy ever, always down here. The Boston site, when it was using the proxy, constantly above the threshold. As soon as we got rid of it, it fell right in line with the site not using the proxy at all. And that shows you how, critical and how that can impact the traffic when you're going to Office 365. Now, if I just remove our friend here and then say, take a look at, say, maybe, after they made the changes, see there's like a, what, 25, 30% increase in the performance now that they've gotten rid of the proxy, continuously beneath the threshold for the login time, beneath the threshold for the upload time, download time. Therefore, the whole scenario is not performing much. If I go back to when it was poor, you can still see exactly the same trends. Again, when it was going through the proxy, the upload was right at the threshold or above it most of the times, if not all the times. Again, the proxy, a couple spikes, but again, huge increase in performance. So again, these are some of the ways that using GSX can help to pinpoint what is going on, not just at one point in time, but continually, especially when you have multiple robots. It'll help you correlate and see what's going on and just picture for you so you can understand what is affecting your end users and could have a negative impact on the performance. So we're actually going to stay with SharePoint Online here on this one, but this time we're going to look at DNS and how that can have an impact on what goes on when you're trying to deliver good performance to your end users. For this one, we're going to take a look at a robot that was deployed in Sydney. So to see though, here's that this robot here was using a DNS that was misconfigured, right? So it's in Sydney, Australia. Its DNS was pointing to somewhere in EMEA, which is just a poor choice to make. When you do that, right, even though the end users are kept working out of Sydney, Australia, when they go to Office 365 because of how DNS is configured, it's going to cause their traffic because their DNS is pointing to the UK. To cause the SharePoint traffic from Sydney to enter the Microsoft global network from the wrong location, from the UK, when they're really signing in from Sydney, Australia. It's way too far away from the actual end user. So that in itself will cause a huge degradation in performance. Specifically, you can see here with the SharePoint logins. So let's take a deeper look at that and see what happened this one. So similar to what we saw before, you can see when DNS was improperly configured. Look at that. Login times were worse than the proxy one. It was just horrendous. Fixed the DNS. That's all they did, literally. Fixed DNS to resolve locally. Sydney, you can see the performance gains immediately in the login times as well, and even in the numbers themselves. So when I go back here and go to a larger time frame, you see it goes up to 71. From where it was before, it's 66. And it's only going to keep getting better and better as the robot continues to gather more data. So again, you see you saw the huge drop in the login times, and then how do we know it's DNS? Let's take a look at this one over here. So on this tab is where we're gathering a lot more metrics as well around the networks, from round trip times and stuff like that. And I'm already on the Sydney location, so it has to be DNS. The round trip time was fine. It was never really bad, even the 5th worst percent of the times. Packet loss was good. Everything was good. The one thing that is bad is DNS. You can see our threshold here again. Microsoft recommendations. It was over the threshold all the time to resolve DNS, resulting these huge login times from this location. At the 5th worst percent of the times for DNS, you can see it was worse than normal. It was all the way over here. Now let's take a look at what happens after. Oh, whoops. We'll take a look at what happens when right, it's 10. After they fix it. So after they fix it, you can see the DNS resolved. The resolution of DNS is now back within regular normal limits, and everything is fine. And even the worst 5th percent of the time, it was still way beneath the thresholds. So again, another way to illustrate how another use case to show how GSX can help you figure out what's going on. And after you make the fix or make a change, we'll continue to monitor and show you whether or not that change is causing better performance or worse performance. And that's all I have for you on SharePoint.
Yeah, but that was great. So what we've seen again is that measuring continuously the end user experience side by side can really help you quantifying exactly how your route to the cloud affect the end user experience. And with this data, you can now make decisions that are based on fact and not on emotion. So that's really, really important, especially for all your network improvement projects where the goal is to improve the end user experience. So let's wrap up what we have learned today. So in order to prevent operational and financial risk at every stage of your Office 365 project, you need to make decisions that are based on facts, on statistics, and not on emotion. You need to be able to decide which route to the cloud is the best for your user, and this side by side. And for that, you need to be able to measure how your changes are affecting the end user experience. Then you need to ensure, of course, your workload deployment success by preventing any unexpected delays that are due to the ability of each of your sites to deliver good quality of services while you are onboarding new users. That's really key. And finally, you need to ensure the end user satisfaction during the adoption phase, and of course after it, in order to limit the productivity loss that are due to performance issues. So that's really the 4 main points that you absolutely need to take out from this webinar. So to do that, there's no magic. You can see quickly how we do that. We always say that the only way to monitor the quality of service of Office 365 is to use it. And that's exactly what our robot users are doing. You deploy them wherever you want, and they just work for you 24 hours, 7 days a week, measuring, alerting, and analyzing the service quality provided by Office 365 to each of your sites and your business line. And this provides values to every stakeholder of your Office 365 project. To your executives, IT executives first, because they will have a way to secure their project costs and to ensure business line satisfaction. That's very important for them. To the operational team as well, because they can prevent issues to become problems, and now they have a tool that they need to deal with this problem when they happen. And finally, to the end user and the entire company, because again, you are now able to ensure optimal productivity, adoption of the workload, and satisfaction. So it's now time for questions, and let's see what you have written in our chat during this webinar. So the first question we had was, who is the alert going to? Is the alert going to the end user, or is the alert going to the IT admin? So, I know the answer, but Garth, maybe you can answer as well.
Yeah, sure. The alerts can go to who. It's all, it's all customizable. So you can send the alerts to whoever you want to send it to. You could send it to groups of people, or 1 or 2. It's all customizable. It just feeds it. We feed it the email address, and it alerts whoever you want it to alert. And as I mentioned as well, we can integrate with ITSMs via webhooks and such, so that we can integrate with your ITSM as well and just follow that workflow too.
Okay, great. Next question is, does GSX have a crowdsourcing method to proactively alert customer on the same tenant region if your robot see issues across multiple customers? So at the moment, I will answer to this one. So at the moment, no. And we'll not for one specific reason. What we have seen is that every client is different. When there is a Microsoft issues, basically Microsoft is doing a very good job at alerting you. Usually they provide a lot of information on their portal, and you know that you have a Microsoft issue. When all of the 95% of the issues, they are not Microsoft related. They are really ISP, network, route to the cloud related. And so, and for that, for all these type of problem, only your company will be impacted. So the alerts and all of that goes to your company. Another question we have is, what about hybrid deployment? So especially on Exchange, is it possible to do the same to ensure end user satisfaction during all this phase of hybrid deployments? So the answer is yes. Our robots, they are doing this scenario. They are able to do this scenario both on-prem and online. And they are also able to do a cross scenario between on-prem and online to make sure that both environments are working together during that phase. So basically, the answer is yes. There's no problem with hybrid deployment. Maybe a last one. So we mentioned proxies and DNS, and that can have an impact on the route to the cloud. What else should we look into? So Garth, it's more for you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, proxies, of course. And when we say proxies, you know, there's a proxy that, you know, it's still traffic still needs to traverse. And there's also an authenticating proxy, which is one of the worst ones because that'll definitely add even more time to logging in and stuff like that. And the DNS as well, as you saw with the route to the cloud and how, you know, that has a large impact on how when the traffic enters the Microsoft global network. Also like WAN accelerators and like anything like that, just, you know, it just doesn't help deliver the performance you're looking to deliver. Because, for example, in that case, it's just what it does. It's a WAN accelerator. So it sort of caches stuff. And in the case of Office 365, you don't really want to do that because it's always changing and, you know, the information is evolving. So you don't want to provide cache content either. So, you know, that, as you mentioned, and of course, the route to the cloud, you know, just optimize that as best you can by looking at some of the recommendations that we've provided.
What about firewall, for example? Is something as well that can impact the end user experience?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that sort of goes, you know, with like a proxy almost, because yeah, of course, you know, you got to make sure you have the right things open. And Microsoft actually even provides documentation on exactly all the different things and endpoints you should really have, you know, just allowed to them because there's no reason for you to really, you know, put all the security in between it. The one reason is they spent billions, I'm not going to say billions, but lots of money on securing Office 365, right? So that's what you know, a lot of organizations don't realize is they've already done this for you. So that's why they make these recommendations as well, so that you know for sure that, you know, your traffic is going to be perfectly secured once it gets there to their network. There's no reason to go through all this extra security when they're already providing it for you.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. And maybe it would be a good topic for following webinar where that would be more focused and how to optimize the route to the cloud. So we should definitely do that in the near future. So thank you everybody. We are just about to go over time with this webinar. So if we did not get the chance to answer all your questions, please be assured we will get back to you in the near future. Thank you for attending today's webinar again. An evaluation is about to show up in your browser. Please take a moment to provide us with your feedback. Thanks again and have a great day. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Bye, Jeff.
Bye-bye.